My name is Seyn, Laproyen. Several people acknowledged the criminality of many actors, many nation states, and the fact that many great powers are headed by criminal people or criminal-minded people or people who are willing to work for them in a criminal way. And much of the so-called peace movement or anti-war movement seems to be oriented into begging them to do the right thing despite their long criminal records. I assume that I'm not the only person who thinks that nation states are criminal organizations, and if we keep assuming that only they are the legitimate parties to any disarmament negotiation or treaty or whatever, we are undercutting our power to envision and to create a world in which nation states do not exist. And we are undercutting our potential to promise to the indifferent masses another world in which more can be done for human beings through organizations that are not inherited. And we are ignoring the fact that part of the criminality that enables other criminalities is that there is no exit, there is no safe legal exit from the nation-state system. And this is a fait accompli against which at least we can speak. There is no criminal nation-state on this planet, and probably the worst example is North Korea, with which you are refusing to negotiate. But in the peace movement, are you negotiating, or are you even recognizing the presence of people who recognize that nation states have to be superseded? And we need not only international organizations, but supranational organizations. Are you recognizing this fact, and where are you?
Okay, we heard your question. Thank you. There are two questions. One was how we can raise public awareness much, much higher about the number one existential threat posed by nuclear weapons, and the second one regarding the criminality of nation states and the need to supersede them. Would you like to take on that controversial question? You want to talk about nation states? This gentleman is saying that nation states are all criminals and they need to be superseded by the people.
Well, I don't know if all nation states are criminals. I think many of them over history have committed many crimes, and I don't condone what has been done by several countries over history in different times, in different aspects. It's very hard to see. There is no way in which you can have a supranational kind of government or a supranational kind of direction to give to nation states. This has been tried before. It was tried it was tried in Europe even in the 1700s. It was tried later with the League of Nations, and it was tried after the war, after 1945, with the United Nations. But these are not institutions that are above the nation state. We have something that we never been able to get rid of, and this is the idea of sovereignty, national sovereignty. And as long as nations think of themselves as being sovereign entities that will not accept any diminution of their right as they see it, the right to act as independent units, as long as you have the notion of sovereignty, it will be very difficult to find something that will supersede the idea of nation states. We have to live with that. This is the reality. It's very hard to think of anything. I mean, the people, when you say the people, what is the people? The people is a very large amount of individuals, men, women, children, seniors, young people. They have different views, different ideas in the world. I don't see any way in which something like a super state, something like a super government above nations would be able to govern. You have to delegate somehow authority to some people. And this is what humanity has been struggling with for as long as it exists. So I think we should try to do the best we can with the institutions we have, like the United Nations and others. When you sit down and negotiate a treaty, you relinquish a part of your sovereignty. You say, well, for the benefit of the nations that make up this treaty, I relinquish a part of it, a part of my own right. And this is the only way that I think things can progress. You have to sit down, to negotiate, to work in good faith with a view of improving the lot of the people in the world. Thank you.
Thank Ambassador Duarte for taking that very challenging question. And so before I introduce Reiner, who's going to make a closing remark, I just want to say something very briefly, which is sort of some of the takeaways from this session. As we leave here, we need to keep in mind that we are living in a starkly divided world. While the ban treaty negotiations were taking place in the UN, 2 floors up in the very same building, in an emergency meeting of the Security Council, the United States was threatening military action against North Korea. And this morning, it was reported that U.S. fighter jets scrambled a Russian military aircraft off the waters of Alaska, in international waters off the coast of Alaska. So that's how close they are coming to each other. So we have to keep both realities, the promise of the ban treaty and the growing dangers of nuclear war, fully in mind as we develop strategies working with other social movements to accomplish the urgent goal of a world without nuclear weapons. So I want to invite Reiner to take the floor and make some closing remarks.